Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Bright on Buddhism. This week we'll be doing a Buddhish episode discussing the Walk for Peace, a long-distance pilgrimage in the United States initiated by Buddhist monks from the Huangdao Vipassana Bhavana Center in Fort Worth, Texas. The idea of this pilgrimage is to promote peace and compassion and nonviolence, and we're here to discuss a little bit about the details and just kind of have a conversation about what this pilgrimage means and how it sits in the context of the historical moment that the U.S. is in right now. So to begin with a little bit of background about the pilgrimage, it is being carried out by a Vietnamese Zen sect. The Vietnamese name for Zen is Tien, which is sometimes a little bit hard to pronounce correctly, but this is the same sect that Thich Nhat Hanh was a part of when he was alive. So it's a very famous and a very popular and very well followed sect of Buddhism, especially in the West. And the monks have set out a route for themselves where they began in Fort Worth, Texas on October 19th, 2025, and they're following a route through the Southeastern United States, passing through states including Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, the Carolinas, and Virginia. And it concludes in Washington, D.C., where they're due to arrive in February 2026, which is only a couple of weeks from now at the time of this recording. The monks are maintaining a meditative walking pace, so they're not rushing, and they pause in various communities along the way to engage with local residents and to talk about the message of the pilgrimage, to supply themselves, to make transitions in their police escort, and stuff like that. Several of the monks have decided to walk barefoot on this entire route. They trek along regular roads. They don't walk on interstates, but they do walk on two-lane roads at a very slow pace, as I mentioned, with a police car escort. So there's usually between 3 and 6 police cars on either end of the pilgrimage, protecting the front and the back as they walk along. So on the pavement, 3 of the monks, including head monk Bhikkhu Panakara, they are walking without shoes on to further emphasize the exertion and the self-sacrifice of the pilgrimage.
There's a lot going on there that's very impressive, and making the trip barefoot especially, that's potentially very dangerous. Unless they've meticulously planned their route to avoid such roads, there are going to be sections of the route where they're at risk of stepping on something and hurting their feet badly. I haven't been through that part of the country recently, but I have been to Arkansas, where my home is, and the roads there are not great. So I think that is a big thing that the folks walking barefoot need to worry about. And that part of the country can also be very cold at this time of year. As we record this, my home in Arkansas is blanketed in snow. So that's going to make going without shoes much harder for those folks. That is very impressive.
Yeah, it's really impressive to think about the conditioning that can take place on the human feet after such a trip, right? You know, like the first few weeks are, I imagine, very miserable, and they involve a lot of blisters and scabbing and just generally tearing the feet up and a lot of pain. But then once the calluses build up and once the feet are conditioned to the weather conditions as well, then you do have a higher capacity for putting up with that kind of stuff. But with the historic snowstorm going through the southeast right now, there is no amount of conditioning or calluses on the feet that can make one immune to that level of cold. Right, so hopefully they're protecting their feet if they're walking barefoot and taking good care of themselves. As I mentioned, they have a police escort, and they usually have also a bunch of paramedics with them and people to generally preserve the well-being of the group. Also along the way on the sides of the roads will be people going out to visit, to wave, to encourage them, and to join them a small part of the walk. So sometimes they have some hangers on, which are also protected by the police escorts and the paramedics. Another very famous key figure in this walk for peace has turned out to be Aloka the dog. So the dog Aloka joined a peace walk in India and then later came to the U.S. and became part of this U.S. pilgrimage. And so Aloka is regularly seen walking well ahead of the group or resting alongside on the road. And he's developed a significant following on social media, and he's kind of become the face of the Walk for Peace. There's something that's very innocent and very cute and very wonderful about this kind of stray dog who's been adopted by these monastics and who's making this walk with them. A post from the walk's official Facebook page mentioned that Aloka actually got minorly injured on January 12th and had to undergo veterinary leg surgery to help remedy that injury. And they didn't really say what the injury was, but the procedure required him to enter a period of restricted mobility as part of a gradual recovery process. And they said that he would be back on the road with them in 2 or 3 days. As of recording now, that has been 2 weeks ago to the day. And so hopefully Aloka is doing well and has continued to walk with the pilgrims.
Yeah, dogs are the best. I hope Aloka is doing well.
So what makes this pilgrimage topical to our show, not just the Buddhism aspect of it, but I really wanted to talk about the meaning and significance of pilgrimage and of an exertion like this. This is especially resonant for me since I did attempt the Shikoku 88 Temples pilgrimage in Japan this last March and will continue to do so this coming March. But it's just another opportunity to discover the meaning of pilgrimage and the meaning of engaging with the community and to discuss what these particular monks' message is and what their overall guiding principle is in doing this. So one of the biggest meanings of pilgrimage in Buddhism is the generation of merit, of good karma. Because of non-self, the generation of merit is not an individual activity. In parts of the world, we can be prone to thinking that moral good and bad is a tally kept on an individual basis. If one steals from somebody else, we typically think that moral transgression is the thief's moral transgression alone and does not bear on the morality of the victim of that crime. But Buddhism doesn't look at morality in this way. In Buddhism, moral perfection is for oneself and also simultaneously and equally for all sentient beings. So in the theft example, the thief's moral bad causes moral bad for the other person. The victim of the crime could become angry and harm somebody, or they could steal from somebody else, or something like that, and that's also a moral transgression. So whenever we're good and we do good acts out in the world, that good spreads and has good ramifications for others. And that's sort of what's central to the message of this pilgrimage is they are walking with the idea of compassion and loving kindness for all sentient beings in mind. And all of their actions along the way are reflecting that. And their intentions then are to spread moral good in this way.
In the example of theft we brought up before, we could also examine the community both the thief and the victim are part of. Did that community fail to provide for the thief so badly that they chose to steal to get by? How did the community support the victim after the theft? Morality is considered a holistic and interconnected thing.
Absolutely right. And those are the things that we're keeping in mind as this walk goes along. So another way to think of it is if you take a cloth and you pull on one singular thread in that cloth, the thread itself doesn't move alone. Instead, the whole cloth pulls in that direction. And this is a good visual metaphor for how morality works, right? We are all woven together in this world, and so our actions, our behaviors pull others in that direction or away from that direction in some way. And it's important to remember that and to think of that as we operate morally in the world. Another meaning of pilgrimage is self-sacrifice. Like we were talking about with the monks going barefoot, pilgrimage is absolutely a physical sacrifice. You are sacrificing the health of your body in some cases, the softness of the pads of your feet. And of course, as you walk more and more, you're sacrificing the energy, the time, the pain in your joints, right? There's so much sacrifice that goes into a pilgrimage that lasts this long. From October to February is just about 4 months. And so that is a long, long time and a long way to walk. Whenever one goes on pilgrimage, they leave behind notions of the self as well, in a metaphorical sense. So it's also a sacrifice of the way that you thought about the world and about yourself prior to leaving. You leave behind your notion of self and you go create opportunities for saving people and spreading the Dharma and living the Dharma as well. And that's what's going on with this group here. They're stopping in big cities and in areas along the way that are supporting them and that are encouraging them on the pilgrimage path and supplying them and feeding them. And while they're giving Dharma talks and spreading the message and just really engaging directly with the community as they go. So this is a very visceral sacrifice as well as a metaphorical and a meditative and a religious sacrifice. A pilgrimage of this size is especially a test of mindfulness and commitment, and it's a demonstration of commitment to the meaning of that sacrifice. Another important aspect of the meaning and significance of pilgrimage in this context is the visibility and the message at the heart of the whole thing. So it's not an exaggeration to say that this pilgrimage is a use of skillful means that has garnered the attention of the whole country. Headlines all over the US, especially in the Southeast, but also outside of it, are talking about what an amazing act this is and what the message of it is, and is giving updates of the monks along the way. And even Aloka is doing a bunch of work to get a lot of publicity and a lot of internet attention for this pilgrimage. There's so much attention on it from all over. And not only is the act itself and the way that it's being reported on an act of skillful means, but the chosen moment in the United States' situation is also very relevant. The monks are doing this in the midst of increased ICE activity, or Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, and increasing social and civil and political tensions in the US. An example is that right now the state of Minnesota is functionally shut down, and people are being murdered there, and there's just escalating tensions between the public and law enforcement. And so, at the same time, in that context, this pilgrimage is happening with the message of nonviolence and compassion and community support and the oneness of all beings and all of that stuff. And it's so especially relevant right now because we are living in a situation here in the US that is completely subject to violence and hate and a complete disregard for the dignity and the rights of human beings. So this message is definitely meant to counterbalance the message that the federal government is sending in Minnesota and in other places in the US. And so it's a very timely act for them to be doing, and it means a lot in this moment, especially given how visible it all is, both the ICE activities all around the country, but also how visible the pilgrimage is. Something else I want to mention about this pilgrimage as well is the safety aspect. We've been talking about ICE so far, and we should mention that the pilgrims themselves, at least the monastics from the center that I was talking about from Fort Worth, Texas, these are primarily Vietnamese Buddhist monks who have migrated from abroad to be in Texas. And so the time and place and history that we're in the US, and especially in the Southeast, naturally leads to some concerns about their safety. They could be subject to harassment by ICE and other law enforcement. But so far, as far as I have seen, there has not been any significant activity on them from ICE or law enforcement or from any hateful citizens as well. And so we can all be very thankful for that.
Yet. We haven't seen any harassment from ICE or law enforcement yet. We've already seen ICE inflict violence on Christian religious figures unprovoked. These are also heavily Christian parts of the country. Most Christians I've talked to express respect for Buddhism, but the ones who don't can be extreme in their opposition and, frankly, bigotry. Make no mistake, these monks are putting themselves at serious risk right now. Their visibility and aggressively peaceful message gives them some protection, but I'm concerned for what happens if we reach a situation where that's not enough. I'm also very curious what will happen when they reach DC. I could see that turning into a major event.
I'm very curious about that as well. I imagine that just like they've been doing along the way, they're going to stop and give a talk or give a speech. And I'm very curious to see what they say and how that speech is received, and if there's any response from the government as to the content or the nature of that, or if they're just going to simply ignore it. That's going to be interesting to see. That's coming up soon in February. Some facts about the pilgrimage regarding safety. There was a traffic accident and a significant injury that occurred and happened to a monk in November of 2025. A truck collided with the police escort vehicle of the pilgrimage and injured 2 monks, and one was injured pretty severely and the other one wasn't injured that badly. The severely injured monk had to have his leg amputated and couldn't continue, and the moderately injured one was able to walk again and rejoined in December when they had made it to Georgia. So it's very unfortunate for the monk who had to have his leg amputated. That is quite a physical sacrifice. All of our good vibes go out to that monk because that's horrible, and hopefully there's no more traffic accidents no more safety incidents along the way as they reach their destination in the coming weeks. So all I have to say beyond that is may they be safe, and may their message be heard, received, and spread the world over. They're doing something that I believe to be an absolute good. We can talk and debate all day about how maybe impactful or how truly helpful it all is in the long run, but at the end of the day, I can't see anything wrong with their actions, their efforts, and their exertion. They're doing it for the good of not just people in the US, not just people in the Southeast, not just Vietnamese people or Buddhist people. They're doing it for the good of every sentient being out there, and that is a completely noble and unimpeachable sort of axiom to be operating from, in my opinion. So I hope that they do well, and I hope that the impact is far, far more than someone cynical like me could ever imagine. And so to conclude the episode, I was going to chant some mantras of support. The light mantra, which is from esoteric Buddhism, and then I was going to also chant the Heart Sutra, which is very, very famous and is one of the primary mantras of Zen, or in this case, Vietnamese Tien Buddhism. Before I start the light mantra chant, is there anything you'd like to add?
I hope that they are successful. I hope that they're safe, and the world is insane right now, and I hope that they can bring a bit of sanity back to it.
I agree. So I'm going to chant the light mantra 7 times for them. O nabo kyabe roshano maka bodara mani handoma jinbara harabari taya un. O nabo kyabe roshano maka bodara mani handoma jinbara harabari taya un. O nabo kyabe roshano maka bodara mani handoma jinbara harabari taya un. O nabo kyabe roshano maka bodara mani handoma jinbara harabari taya un. O nabo kyabe roshano maka bodara mani handoma jinbara harabari taya un. O nabo kyabe roshano maka bodara mani handoma jinbara harabari taya un. O nabo kyabe roshano maka bodara mani handoma jinbara harabari taya un. And then I was going to chant the Heart Sutra. Busetsu maka hanya hara mita shingyo. Kanji zai bosa gyojin hanya hara mita ji shoken gon kai kudo isai ku yakushari shi shiki fui ku fui shiki sokuze ku sokuze shiki ju so gyo shiki yakubu nyo ze shari shi ze shoho ku so fu metsu fu ku fu jo fu zo fu genze koku chu mu shiki mu jo so gyo shiki mu gen ni bi zeshin ni mu shiki shoko mi soku ho mu gen kai nai shi mu I shiki kai mu myo yaku mu myo jin nai shi mu ro shi yaku mu ro shi jin mu kushu metsu ro mu chi yaku mu toku I mu shoto Go bodai satta e hanya hara mita zedai jinshu zedai myoshu ze mujo shu ze mutodo shu no jo issai kushin jitsufu koko setsu hanya hara mita shu soku setsu watsu gyate hara so gyate boji soaka Hanya Shingyo. We hope you enjoyed this discussion of the Monks Walk for Peace across the Southeastern US. All the best luck and wellness and joy to the monks, and I hope that their message, as we've said, has worldwide impact.
Agreed. Best of luck to them, and I hope it works.
Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening. If you like our show and want to support us financially, we ask that you instead send that support to a worthy cause. In our previous charity throw, we directed listeners to the GoFundMe for Keith Porter Jr., a man murdered by ICE earlier this year. Between posting that and recording this message, ICE has murdered yet more people. Unfortunately, there will be even more in the near future. Changing our message for every victim of these fascist thugs is not logistically possible for us. Instead of directing to a specific person, we encourage listeners to donate to whichever ICE victim's fundraiser that has the least amount at the time you donate. If we can find them, we will have links to all of these fundraisers in the show notes. At the time of recording, the list of people murdered by ICE in 2026 includes Victor Manuel Díaz, Geraldo Lunas, Luis Gustavo Núñez, Luis Beltran Yanez, Herbert Sanchez Dominguez, Parody La, Keith Porter Jr., Alex Pretty, and Renee Good. We can get through this. Our strongest weapon is solidarity. Stay strong and help where you can. Thank you.
My name is Nick Bright, scholar of East Asian religions and the voice of Hearer.
And I'm Docs, editor, question asker, and voice of Hermit.
And this has been Bright on Buddhism. Thank you for listening. If you like our podcast, or if you have any questions that you'd like us to discuss, we'd love to hear from you. Please consider leaving a comment, review, or subscribing. You can also reach us by email at bright.on.buddhism@gmail.com. As always, citations and resources for this episode can be found in the show notes. Thank you.